Hi, and welcome to From Many People's Strength, the podcast that covers Saskatchewan politics and current events. My name is Cory Johnson, and my pronouns are he and him.
And I am David Richards. My pronouns are he and him, or they and them. So,
all right.
So to start with, I guess we knew this was coming when I said it, but I should probably start off by giving an official apology about talking about how warm it was last week, as we now experience minus a shit ton.
Holy cow! Yeah, it is so cold.
I did the experiment with my kids this afternoon of tossing the cup of boiling water in the air and it turning into snow. Like, all right, guys, this is how cold it is. This water is literally boiling. It is now snow.
Right, yeah.
In the air. So, and it was one of those when we said it last, like the warm, unseasonably warm weather is not sign that there is global warming. Unseasonably cold is not proof that there isn't. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But as far as actual stories go, where do we want to start this week? There's a few different things that are a bit more varied than what we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that we might not have covered on another week. Like this is a lot of these stories are kind of, I don't know, like more news, less politics, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. Very true. And some things that they seem indicative of bigger problems, but they do really have that local flavor to them.
Yeah.
That seems to be sort of a common thread that goes throughout. So, where do we want to start though? Do we want to start the end and work our way backwards?
Sure.
We had the story at the end of the week about Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes.
Am I saying his name right? Dan LeBlanc.
Yeah.
We're bringing up the article.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone who has been up in arms about cancel culture for the last however many years is certainly up in arms about this as well. I'm sure they are raising alarm bells about cancel culture this week because of what happened. Right? That we heard that hue and cry from.
Yep.
No,
that's right.
No, we didn't. Oh,
I'm sure we just missed it then.
Right? We just missed it. Okay, or maybe they'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I technically he says in the article he does not know. He didn't comment on whether or not it was related to the issue, but it is a little bit suspect.
Yeah.
Dan LeBlanc lost his job at the law firm that he was working at.
Gerard Rath Johnson LLP let him go.
Yes,
but they gave no reason for the termination.
Yeah, this is something that he says here. Essentially, employers in Saskatchewan have the legal ability to fire someone without cause, and that is a thing that I've been telling people. Like, despite the fact that I was at an employer who valued my work. But the fact that I had different politics than them meant that they could just decide that they didn't want me around if I was too, noisy about things at the workplace.
They couldn't outright say it was because of your politics.
Yes, that's right. They can
as long as they're not stupid and give you no reason, and they have to if depending on how long you've been there are rules around how much they have to pay you. So like LeBlanc probably got a fairly decent severance package.
I would think so.
I have no doubt that he is going to land on his feet just fine. Like the city councillor position, it's not that it doesn't pay well. It pays good real money, but most city councillors will do it as a part-time job. And if he was a lawyer and fairly high up within his previous firm. He was probably making good money before and would have gotten a very sizable severance. I'm not feeling, I'm not going to go start up a GoFundMe for Dan LeBlanc. And I don't think LeBlanc would be asking for anyone to set up a GoFundMe. But yeah, no, it's very easy to fire people.
Yep. I like this thing that he says here now. He's going to start his own firm, LeBlanc Law, and he says, I'll have a bit more flexibility to do the work I want to do, which is similar to the work I'm doing on council. So representing everyday working class folks for their legal needs, which is, I mean, it always seems like there's a need for that. I'm sure there are many lawyers who do represent working people, but also it always seems like when I go to talk to a lawyer, it's very expensive. So
it is not cheap. No, I hear that. So yeah, it'll be like good for him on starting his own company or his own firm. I think he's going to land on his feet just fine. He talks about how he's looking forward to the next chapter. It's just one of those things where, you know, if someone had, if one of the counselors who had been opposed to the motion was terminated from their job in the exact same week, at the exact same time, with the exact same level or lack of explanation, you would be hearing people losing their mind this week.
Yeah, like, the outrage would not have been unreal.
Oh, the outrage would be through the roof, and people complaining about cancel culture and how it's dangerous to be a conservative and they're being hunted in the street for sport. And again, like, I think there is a point to be made on all of this stuff around employment security and around how labor laws treat termination and things like that. I think that is a larger conversation that never seems to actually get made when a conservative gets fired for being a racist or a homophobe or whatnot, and vocally, you know, saying things like that. So if anyone has thought over the last few years that, you know, conservatives facing consequences for their actions would lead to them coming out in support when someone on the other side of the political spectrum faces, you know, consequences for their beliefs, this one more example
that happens.
Yeah, so that we can leave that one where it is. And,
so, all right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, it was, again, this is a little bit stepping further afield, but it was one of those things where I was really impressed because I was at a previous employer, and a big, like, multinational giant company, and about 400 people worked in the office that I worked in, and there was like 2 or 3 people who were in a very niche position whose jobs had been eliminated. Okay. And the senior vice president was doing a focus group with some people, and I was in a similar department, and they were talking about various things, and she said, you know, asking us, you know, what are some things that lead to stress and all the things like that bigwigs do in focus groups,
right?
And I said, you know, I have to be honest, you know, one of the sources of stress is job security, because, you know, just saw 2 coworkers get let go, have to question that. And she just looked at me and it was like, she didn't say, I probably shouldn't say this, but you saw that look on her face. And she said, I'm going to be honest, there's no such thing as job security. You know, the company is going to extract from you everything it can for the price it can extract it. And the only job security that exists is you doing the same thing to the company in return.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And she's like, yeah, like, we offer you education, like they pay for education. She sort of went through all of these things around training and development, and you know, you can take university courses and have the company pay for it and all these, like, the way you develop job security is exploit the company as best you can so that if you are ever let go, you'll be really hireable. I'm like, yeah, that is the most honest answer I have ever heard from a corporate bigwig. Yeah. And it stuck with me because that was probably 20 some odd years ago now. But it does speak to the fact that we
I don't know too many people that would be that honest.
No. But like that is this whole cancel culture, this whole thing about, you can get let go from your job. Like, Like one of the reasons why there's an argument for UBI, one of the reasons why there's an argument for a strong social safety net. Capitalism works better when the labor force is greased, when there is a high level of liquidity within the labor force where people can easily go from one job to another. Capitalism actually works better for everyone when that happens. So if we put things in place that facilitate that, like a strong social safety net, like medical, dental, mental health benefits that are untied to employment, or in the case of the United States, just overall health benefits that are untied to employment. UBI, things like that. But getting philosophical at this point on what makes capitalism work better.
I mean, I don't think it does, but it works better when because there's got to be that balance, right? Yeah. You have to balance the employer's needs versus the security of your employees. And people have to be able to go to a better job without destroying a company or, destroying their life. So,
companies adapt. When someone leaves, companies figure it out.
Generally.
Always view the analogy. Always view yourself like a hand in a bucket of water. When the hand gets pulled out, the other water sort of rushes in to fill its spot. The water level goes down, and so you need to replace it with something else. But you're not going to leave a giant hole that everyone can see. So
not usually. No, you'd have to be like the only employee.
And like there are companies with key employees and things like that, but even then, you're still a bucket of sand still at that point. It's still you're still replaceable. All right, so where do we want to jump to next?
We could do this one that I just found today also. Although it looks like it came out on the 15th. More than a quarter of Saskatchewan children living in poverty. So, I mean, even just a stat like that, it's depressing. It's concerning.
I think it's based on 2017 data and then a report that was done in 2019. So it's
not even like up to date, really.
Yeah. So it's one of those. The article came out on the 15th of January. Based on a report that was done in 2019, based on data that was done in 2017, which is how often these things work, right? Where we're usually dealing with some lag time on the data. But 26.2% of Saskatchewan children being considered poor, the third highest poverty rate in Canada, after Nunavut and Manitoba.
Yeah.
So,
which I mean, people.
The rate for Canada as a whole is 18.6, so that's pretty high too. Like 18.6 isn't a low poverty rate, but 26.2 is frightening.
Yeah, it's something's definitely off, right? And I wonder, I don't know if it says in this article, but it seems like the fact that our minimum wage is the lowest in Canada probably plays a role.
Yeah. The report specifically calls out the failure to invest in social services during the province's economic boom. So it said during the economic boom that went from 2009 to 2014, there was a failure to invest in social services. There's a failure. Basically, there's a failure to have the benefits that some were reaping spread amongst everyone in the province.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's going to be shocked or surprised by hearing that. I think some people might think that's a good thing, but I don't think I don't know if even conservatives are going to be surprised by that information. They may try and justify it, but I don't see them being surprised.
Yeah. It also says responsible taxation, including the wealthy and corporations, would go a long way in remedying the large disparity of distribution of income, which is another thing that many of us have been saying for a while. Yeah, so I mean, mainly the headline kind of caught me off guard a little bit at first, but then after the initial reaction, it was, I mean, this makes sense to me. Like, it seems like a quarter of people are poor.
Yeah. And the report really does talk about how the gap between the rich and the poor have grown. So it's not just that there are more poor children than there were in 2004. So in 2004, the rate was 24.6. It went up to 27.5 and then back down to 26.2 in 2017. But like when you're dealing with those types of jumps, that's significant. But it's not just that the number of people below the poverty line went up; the level of disparity increased as well. So those who did benefit from the boom benefited a disproportionate amount as well.
Yeah. So when people say that, like the province, the boom helped the entire province, well, they're just fundamentally incorrect.
Yeah, absolutely. That is mathematically false.
Yeah.
And again, we can disagree on the philosophy of who should get the benefits from it. But
yeah, I mean, I know that there are certainly people who think that if you are one of these people who got wealthy, that there are stories about people who started a rig company and then sold it and came out very well ahead during the boom. And that's fine, but something needs to be changed. We got to stop looking at these individual stories where somebody benefited and look at the statistical truth that a quarter of our province is below poverty.
Yeah. And doesn't need to be.
Right. Yeah.
That's part of the key message there as well. This. Yeah. The other thing the report did, and I don't know if this is a positive or a negative, it did also take a look at the impacts of the social spending that was in place. And the report estimates, were it not for the existing social spending in place at the federal and the provincial level, that number would probably be over 40%. So we do have things that are in place. It talks about how looking at the federal child benefit,
right.
And its report found 9.5% of Saskatchewan children who received the federal child benefit were lifted from below the poverty line to above the poverty line.
Yeah, I can say even in my own life that child tax benefit has made things it's helped a lot. Like we have two quite little ones, and it makes paying the rent and buying food a possibility every month, where it would be quite a struggle otherwise.
Yeah. And again, this is that thing where, you and I have different philosophies on capitalism as a whole.
Right.
I would argue the existence of those things is still a huge net positive from a capitalist perspective, because it enables you to still be productive. Were you to start falling below the poverty line in your family, and you and your spouse reach that sort of desperation line, it doesn't motivate people to start working harder or looking harder for work. Like, we know that's not true.
Right.
We know that when people fall below that poverty line, they become less productive. They end up spending more of their day-to-day energy on pure survival. And stop generating GDP for the economy. Because if you're just scrambling for survival, you're not generating the same level of GDP, the same level of productivity that you're generating if you're out in the workforce thriving.
So even, like you say, even from the capitalist perspective, having people above the poverty line is a good thing.
Absolutely. Cold-hearted, workers are nothing but a resource to exploit. You still want good resources.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't think we should view people as exploitable resources, but even with that perspective, it still makes sense.
Yeah, agreed.
Do we want to dip our toes into some COVID stories?
Yeah, we can touch on some COVID stuff. You want to talk about Mr. D's?
We can do that. So it looks like the owner of Mr. D's received a $14,000 COVID ticket. She's claiming that her business was unfairly singled out. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where she kind of contradicts herself. So I'm curious as to where it goes, because at one point she's arguing that she shouldn't be fined because she wasn't given proper warning. And then at another point, she talks about how she feels like she's being unfairly persecuted because they kept coming out to the bar and warning her before they find her. So I don't necessarily know how you can argue both of those things. Like,
Well, this is interesting. I didn't notice this actually last time I read this article.
Which part?
The tweet where today we asked Guy Quenneville.
Oh yeah, Guy Quenneville. Yeah, the about them posting the thing about respecting customers without masks.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Yes, publicly tweeting that you're gonna not enforce the mask mandate.
Yeah,
and then and again, this is one of those. Sometimes I wonder again if people understand. Actually, I don't wonder. I know for certain people don't really understand what freedom of expression entails.
No,
because they go, oh well, she should be allowed to say what she wants and without fear of recourse from the government. And then you know what? I agree. I think you should be able to speak out against things and not necessarily be punished by the government purely for non-hate speech. Speech that isn't hate speech that isn't in incitement to violence. You shouldn't be punished for speech. A couple of things, libel, et cetera. So there's some exceptions.
Right.
And so I don't think if someone posts a tweet that says, I think everyone should rob banks.
Oh,
you know what?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that you're borderline because maybe that's violence, but in general, here, talking about, eating the rich or what have you, like you can talk. But if you post something that says, I think everyone should go rob a bank, and then you go and rob a bank and you get caught because the police were watching you because you just announced that you were going to go rob a bank.
Yeah.
You're not being unfairly targeted because of your free speech.
Right.
You made stupid speech announcing that you're going to do a crime, and the stupid speech enabled you to get caught by the cops.
Yeah.
That gets you on America's Dumbest Criminals. That doesn't get you on the Champions of Free Speech.
You can say whatever you want to within reason.
Yeah.
But it can still be used as evidence in your trial. Yes.
And announcing you're going to do a crime is probably not the best way to get away with the crime.
Yeah, that's right.
There is something to be said for, our other establishments being targeted in the same way, who've committed the same crime. Conversely, do bright red sports cars get more speeding tickets than other cars going just as fast? Like, there is something to be said about, if you're going to break the law, don't draw attention to yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that piece of it is there. At the end of the day, though, like, the law exists. She was warned. You and I have talked a lot about our feelings on, a carceral justice system. That being said, fines on a business, I'm pretty okay with, because that's no longer the state cracking down on an individual or restricting the freedom of an individual. That's, businesses who want to operate within the framework of a civil society having to follow the rules of that civil society.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, is like, this is not the police coming to your door. This is not the police tackling some kid on the ice that everybody, all the conservatives were pissed off about in Alberta. Like, this is a business breaking the rules that they knew they had to follow. And if they don't pay the fine, then they could probably face further penalty.
Yep. So it's it is what it is. Again, we are. I'll do my what seems like almost a weekly tip of the hat to surpassing the bare minimum for Scott Moe.
Yep.
days before the event, he publicly announced that the province would be stepping up its effort to discipline bars that violate the health orders. And then it happened.
I am not convinced, and maybe I don't know. I'm not convinced that the rules make a lot of sense or are being followed. I've seen, and I go to many restaurants and bars for delivery pickups, and many of them they have tables too close. They have too many seats filled. They have many people waiting in the lobby for seating. It's cold. You don't want to make people wait outside if you don't have to, but there shouldn't be 10 people waiting inside, in a small area. It's just, there's the cracked, either the rules need to be much clearer or they need to be changed because, if these are the rules and everybody's following them, then they're too lax, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree.
That's where I'm at.
One of the other weird stories weird things that came out about this is the owner of the bar, Danica Sweinkopf, said, I explained to him that I'm not going to pay this and that I'm going to fight it. And he said, then I will go to jail. You don't go to jail for not paying business fines. As far as I know, that is not my understanding.
Wouldn't it be more like a loss of a license or something?
And you don't need to put people in jail. One of the whole reasons why you incorporate is that you sever the liability from the individual and the business. Right. That's the whole that is the whole purpose of corporations existing, is it severs that liability. So there's the fines will increase if she doesn't pay it.
Right.
And it looks like the fines go up to $100,000 for first offense and $250,000 for subsequent offenses. So that $14,000 might turn into $100,000 if she doesn't pay it. But I also think there's an appeal process for any summary conviction, right? If you didn't have to go to a trial before the punishment was applied, if an inspector or a cop or whoever can just apply the punishment without a trial, they have to give you the ability to fight it. And my understanding is that the fine won't increase during that part of the process.
Right. It's like appealing a ticket or saying not guilty for a ticket, right?
Right. So I think she's fine for that increasing at this point. But if she goes through all of those appeals and whatnot and still is found guilty and they charge her, I think that does go up if she doesn't pay it.
Right.
And you and I have talked about this before. There should virtually never be a need to turn around and use jail as the consequence.
No.
Because the government can take money out of your bank account. The government has the full weight of the court system behind it and can just go, oh, okay, you now owe this money. It will take it because we have the ability to just take it. And you can't really put money somewhere the government can't reach if you run a business.
That's right.
And again, this is one of those things where you can disagree or about whether the system should work that way,
right? But it does.
I'm sure. Yeah, but it does. I'm sure Ron Swanson is outraged when he hears this. But so this trying to make yourself into a victim by saying, "Oh, if I don't pay this, they're going to put me in jail." No, they're not. No. You're using the government's money, and I mean that. Physically, the currency is owned by us collectively. We are the ones who own the concept of Canadian money. So if you're wanting to use Canadian currency, that's the trade-off you pay. I guess you could run your bar purely accepting Bitcoin or something, but I don't know. A lot of people
Dogecoin.
I I don't know a lot of people who want to use cryptocurrency to buy a beer.
No.
So.
No, that's right. I think I could see if you're in a heated moment saying to an inspector, I'm not going to pay this, and them retorting, then you'll go to jail.
Yeah. So she might not have been making it up. It may have been an inspector who is.
Yeah. But she's definitely not going to go to jail for a.
No.
Like, that's so far away from impossibility.
So it is what it is. There's been a couple other, other bars. I say, and again, the province says they're going to be cracking down on things more. And the article goes on to talk about how Crackers up in Saskatchewan has been linked to over 80 different COVID cases.
Right.
And it was ticketed. So we also know that like these aren't being ticketed arbitrarily. Like if a bar has been linked to over 80 cases,
then they're doing something wrong.
Yeah. So
I don't know for sure, but I was told by somebody that one of the nightclubs here in Regina has said, well, it's fine. I'll just pay the fine. I make more having people come in than I'm going to lose by being fined. And I don't know, I don't know how good an attitude that is either, but
yeah. Talked about that before though too, right? If the punishment for something is a fine, it's legal for the rich.
Yeah, that's right.
I question from a business sense, like if the fines start escalating.
Yeah, if you go from 14,000 to 100,000, that's a big difference, right?
Yeah. But even like this was one event that was a $14,000 fine. Like,
yeah,
if you're breaking the law and you continue breaking the law, I don't think there's anything that prevents the authorities to continue fining you. And if they're making more than $15,000 a night in profit, like that seems really bizarre to me. I don't imagine any Saskatchewan bar is making. It
seems way too high, right?
5-digit profit in a single night. Even if you just say we will only open on what would have been our biggest night of the week. So whether it's Friday or Saturday, we're only going to break the rules Friday and Saturday,
right? And
we're willing to pay a $14,000 fine once a week. Like that's really high. Like what's that work out to? Like $700,000 a year.
It's a lot of profit that you're losing.
Yeah. I can't imagine there's a lot of, and maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe there are business owners in Saskatchewan who own bars and their bar is raking in $1 million a year, in profit.
Yeah. Above expenses.
Yeah. No, in pure profit, $1 million a year. Maybe. If you start getting those fines bigger though, if the subsequent fines do jump up to 250,000.
Yeah. And the state, does have at its disposal the ability to just shut you down.
Yeah.
Like if you're just going to be a repeat offender, yeah, sure, they'll fine you. They'll fine you another one.
Revoke your liquor license.
Yeah. They'll just say, okay, well, you can't run this business anymore.
Yeah. And then your profit definitely drops and you still have the fines to pay.
Yeah.
At that point, the business just declares bankruptcy and closes and, people go on their merry way. But
yeah. It's just not a good attitude to
have. And again, we can talk about whether governments have too much power or not, and that's its own thing. But we've had decades to talk about that now that it's affecting the wrong sort of people, or arguably affecting the right sort of people. We can expand from there, but
I think we both know. I think we have similar views on this. Maybe not identical. I think the government should stay out of my personal business. But if it's a business, then yes, that has to be taken care of. There needs to be interference there. But
extent we're talking. The businesses rely on the state to function. You cannot function without the support of the state in the modern economy, because you require a state for the enforcement of contract and for a common currency. Like those two things alone you know, you don't even need to get into roads and infrastructure and all that. Just the enforcement of contract and common currency, that in and of itself, you need the state for those two things.
Yeah.
So. All right. Are there other COVID things that we want to talk about this week other than stats, cocktail, and dreams?
Well, we had a health minister the health minister is disappointed that an SHA board minister or board member went to California. But they've been there since November and they're planning on staying, I guess.
Okay.
So I guess they're doing their board duties remotely.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's much to say about this. It is what appears to be another example of a person who has a certain level of privilege and power, just, you know, doing what they think they want to do, regardless of what other people are supposed to do.
Yeah.
Even if this person, Judy Davis, traveled to California in November, it's still, I think we all knew we weren't supposed to be traveling in March or April. Right?
Yeah. Travel has been a no-no for
the whole time, pretty much. So.
Yeah. I talked about this past summer. I had tickets literally to Disney World with my children purchased.
Wow.
Ready to go. Like, had the plane tickets bought, had the Magic Kingdom tickets bought, had the hotel bought, and it was me and my kids and my parents and my sister had the resort picked out and paid for. And it was July of last year, and yeah, we canceled it because it was dangerous.
Yeah.
So, did
you get a refund on your tickets?
Most things were good. There were some things my parents paid for, some things I paid for. The cost was being split.
Okay.
So there were most things are credits or are. Most things are credits rather than refunds, but right. In theory, we'll go to Disney World sometime in the next 2 years. We basically do the same trip, probably 2021, right. As opposed to 2020 or
2022,
sorry,
maybe
2022 as opposed to 2020 or 2021. Right. This year's still a write-off, and we're not going to go anywhere this summer because the vaccinations won't be there in time, and there's no way Florida is going to be safe by the summer.
No, that's right.
Of all the places that won't be safe by summer, Florida is high on that list. So the Disney had a bunch of things on you got credits that could be used towards this, that, or the other, because we bought a bunch of the packages and plans, and so they kind of did you'll get the same plan or better if you do it within this window, but if not, you'll just get a credit. It was. I haven't spent all that much time figuring things out. There was a couple other things that I had to cancel as well. So I've got credits with Air Canada and with WestJet because of flights that got canceled. My parents got us some tickets through Swoop, and I know that one. I think they may have had to eat some cost with that because it's already pretty discounted.
Right.
We'll see if Swoop still exists.
I know for a while there was some debate whether or not airlines would even be on the hook for any of this stuff, or if they just were going to do it out of the goodness of their hearts, if they were going to, because apparently in a lot of cases there's some clause in the sale of airline tickets that says that they can cancel it at will and you don't get a refund. So
yeah. So a lot of that stuff is up in the air. But again, as far as some of the politicians who are doing that, we knew in November, this wasn't a surprise to anyone, and possibly falling within the letter of the law, if not the spirit of it.
Kind of like the rest, right?
Yeah. I'm kind of less. when it's fuzzy, I'm less bothered. I don't know if you're staying there indefinitely and you're doing things remotely and you're not coming back and infecting people and you're staying, you're following social distancing and mask wearing while you're there and all of that. I think at that point, I guess that becomes more of a personal risk. Like if you're personally choosing to be in the United States right now, okay, I guess.
Especially California.
That seems like an odd choice.
California's in bad shape right now too.
Yeah. Well, and like, what does she mean by indefinitely? Because travel medical only covers you so long. Like once you're there more than 6 months, you are now paying full price for good old American healthcare. If something happened, like unrelated to COVID, if she's there for more than 6 months and doesn't buy like American health insurance, and there's rules on that too, as a foreign national who, like, I don't know if she's considered to be working, like all of that starts getting complicated and is going to start getting very, very expensive for her one way or another, even if she can buy insurance once that 6 month mark hits. So, but again, that's a personal choice. And if she's wealthy enough that she can afford that personal choice,
then I guess,
then so be it. I don't know if there's a lot of other COVID related stories, a couple things, vaccine shortage, but that's still more of the same from what we've talked about before.
Yeah.
The province is sort of recognizing it.
The one thing that I thought was interesting, I was listening to, I think it was an announcement. I heard it on the radio on Tuesday, I believe it was. And they were talking, like the health minister was talking about how we have distributed 106% of the vaccines that we got, where there are still some provinces that are still at like the 80% mark.
Yeah.
So we are actually, I mean, for what it's worth, Saskatchewan isn't doing too bad.
Yeah, we're doing well with what we got. And tip of the hat to, we would be blaming Mo. I would be blaming Mo if this was behind track. If we were at 70%, I would expect some of the criticism to fall on his lap. So we'll give some of the credit to him as well. Yeah. I think it's probably even more so a testament to the frontline folks in the province. We'll give them a lot of credit as well.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I guess we've said it a million times. I think there could be better restrictions. We could be doing more, but as far as the actual vaccines go, we're doing all right. I think we're as good as we can.
Yep. And there's the fight as well around the relabeling of the vials.
Right.
As we've, been able to extract 6 doses per vial instead of 5. So Pfizer's wanting to now say, okay, well, let's start charging you for 5 or start charging you for 6, essentially.
Apparently it's not as reliable as, it's not reliably 6 doses. Mm-hmm. So
in most cases there's 6, but not in all.
Yeah. So I guess this is capital versus government.
We'll see. I don't know who blinks first on that one, but keep on doing what we're doing, and ideally we don't. We can hold off as much of the weariness. I can be pretty harsh about some of this. I have empathy for it, and where those lines are and falling into the gray areas on behavior. I have a lot more sympathy for anyone who, like I said, falls within some of those gray areas on safety versus not, as opposed to no, you're fully crossing that line. You've well crossed the blurry line. You are starkly standing in the this is unsafe now. You're putting other people at risk zone. So, but
speaking of putting other people at risk,
good segue.
There was a driver in Regina who got a ticket for $1,291 for going 160 24 in a 70 zone. This caught my eye because we've often used this as an analogy.
Yeah.
This guy definitely needs to have some issue. Like that's deadly dangerous.
Like, I'm just trying to find that story here because I didn't read it in much detail. But like, at that speed, that's dangerous driving, not just a ticket. In my mind,
it's his car was impounded for 24 hours. But yeah, it doesn't give a lot of detail as to like how much more this is going to go. But that's super dangerous. That's deadly driving. That's precisely the example we use over and over again when we're talking about
it didn't mention any sort of jail time or trial or anything like that for the individual. No. So it sounds like it was just an impound and a fine, but like to be honest, like that amount seems small to me for that speed. Excessive speed. The article doesn't say where it happened either. I'm trying to tell from the picture that they've posted what street that might have been.
It's hard to say. Yeah,
it's hard to say. I was trying to think where are there 70 zones and like that. Where are there 70 zones where we realistically could go that fast? I'm thinking maybe like parts of Louvain are only 70 and they're quite straight.
But coming in from the east on Arcola.
Yeah. But there's lights there, right? So I don't.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe if you come in on Vic, if you're still going off of Highway 1, you still go up that. It hits a 90 zone and then it hits a 70 zone and then you still aren't at the lights for a while. So it's possible that it was
possibly there. Could be. So I don't know. That just seems pretty damn intense at that point. Like,
yeah.
Again, if not looking at possible jail time, I think at that point, like that suspension of the license territory in my mind.
I would think so. But
like for at least a couple years, at that speed, like
it's so dangerous. Like
160 in winter.
Yeah.
So even if there isn't snow on the ground, like you have no idea if you're going to hit an icy patch at like even 100 is like, driving this time of year, even with winter tires, even doing like the 110 limit on a 110 highway,
right.
I still have a bit of, all right, if I hit an icy patch, what's going to happen here?
Yeah. You absolutely have to be paying attention.
Like always that's running in the back of my head in winter driving. Yeah. Again, even on the highway, even staying at the limit. But 164.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah. Jiminy cricket.
Okay.
One thing I will mention, if we quickly touch back on COVID stuff,
sure.
I think it's a great thing to put on our the podcast page for anyone who wants to see it. The CBC put out a great FAQ on COVID. That was really thorough, looked really good, gave answers at a clear level that aren't overly complicated. So that might be a good thing to. I don't know if we need to talk about the fact that it exists, but or say that it exists.
Yeah, I guess the question of why is there no flu is something that is rampantly being discussed. Like it's a huge talking point for people who want to downplay the impact of COVID. They always say, well, why is there no flu? Why is nobody talking about the fact that there's no flu? Well, here's a fact that it talks about this.
Yeah. The fact that the things that slow down the spread of COVID also slow down the spread of the flu. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. That would be where my brain would go, but okay.
I read an article that said that everywhere in the world that has the flu regularly is experiencing this diminished flu numbers. And it's because COVID came first and we're all taking all these precautions. And so it reduces the number of flu cases. But
The one place where they're not seeing as much of a diminished impact of the flu this year is, guess where? Neighbors to the south. So the places that aren't taking a lot of COVID precautions are noticing their flu rates are also not going down.
Interesting.
So, shocking, right?
Shocking.
Utterly shocking.
Yes.
This isn't specifically a Saskatchewan story, but my favorite conspiracy theory of the week involved the retractable needles. Have you heard about this?
I have not.
So most needles now have a safety feature where after they're injected, the metal part of the needle retracts back into the plastic casing.
Right.
But what it looks like to people who don't bother taking 30 seconds to figure shit out is they see a needle with a little metal part sticking out, goes into someone's arm, and the needle comes out, and there's no metal part there anymore. And these people are losing their mind because they're 100% certain that the metal is being left behind in people's arms. Because did you see there was metal part when it went in and no metal part when it came out? So again, not a Saskatchewan story, not a thing I want to spend a lot of time talking about, but it's just that thing where it's like there's explanations for this stuff, guys.
Yes.
So
I mean, I don't want to get into epistemology. Why different media spheres are feeding different people the wrong information.
It's fair.
But, okay, so
all right,
we have to talk about Moose Jaw's new ad, and we might want to even play it.
Play it. Do it.
All right, so I will set this up. It's called "Escape to Moose Jaw, Canada's most notorious city."
We're escaping now rather than discovering.
That's right.
You used to discover us. Now that you've discovered us, now you can escape to us.
Are you a Canadian politician taking heat for going away at Christmas? Listen up. I'm Fraser Tolmie, Mayor of Moose Jaw. And I'm notoriously lucky because I don't need to take the heat to get away from it all. Why? Thank you. Because we have it all right here in Canada's most notorious city. We have all the amenities and no shaming. So, if you're someone trying to escape from it all, do what Al Capone did. Come to Canada's most notorious city. They'll never tell.
I thought for sure he was going to be nude. So that was filling up my Reddit feed for a little bit, for about a day.
I bet. And it's one of those ones like, it's funny. I like the ad. I'm of two minds of it because I don't got to be careful of traveling in general.
Yes, even if you're going to Moose Jaw. But
if you're traveling, good point. Travel to Moose Jaw. Don't travel to California. I love Moose Jaw. It's probably one of my favorite places in the province. I haven't been there during COVID.
No.
But again, this is one of those ones where the gray area piece kicks in on where is your various risk thresholds, because, driving to a hotel, staying in the room. I don't know if their pool is open. It looked like he was in the pool at the spa, but I don't know if that's I wouldn't feel safe in the spa.
I have spoken to a couple of people who work at hotels here in town, and there are people who live in the city who are going to hotels to use the pool and water slides and what have you.
Yeah.
And apparently, most of the hotels that have it, you have to book a time for the pool.
Yeah.
And they have a maximum number of families that can be in there at any given time.
Yeah.
and you're supposed to stay in your bubble or whatever
Distance,
as much as you can. But
yeah. And my understanding is chlorine does kill the virus. So it's not going to spread through the water. I don't know about saline and bromine pools. I don't know. I'm sure someone smarter than me has looked into that piece of it. In the actual pool itself, that for me would probably be beyond my risk threshold. But driving down to Moose Jaw, getting a hotel room, staying in your room. At the spa, they have rooms where you can actually get the mineral water tub in your room.
Yeah.
Those are way more expensive. So again, we're dealing with a fair degree of privilege to afford that.
Yeah.
Other methods of staying safe in that type of isolated environment. As soon as you're out of your own home, you're eating out more often. But if getting food delivered to your house once a week or twice a week versus getting food delivered to your hotel room 2 to 3 times a day, you're increasing your risk threshold a little bit, but it's a relatively low risk activity to begin with.
I guess it's a calculus. Everybody's got a
that gray area for me. We're all going nuts in this pandemic. So if we find ways of keeping our mental health in a good shape, and it is a lower risk activity. I can't fault that. I hope they're not playing those ads outside of Canada. I don't want Americans coming to Moose Jaw to enjoy the spa.
No.
I honestly probably not even sure if I want people from a province away coming to Moose Jaw to enjoy the spa or the casino. Where I don't know if the tunnels are open with COVID, but I would assume not.
No, I wouldn't think so. But
that I've done those tunnel tours, and you're in pretty close proximity, and you need a lot of live actors to do it. So I don't think they run in the winter anyways, but even in the summer.
Yeah.
So, it was a funny ad. I like that it makes fun of people who travel to the States.
Yeah.
Do we want to touch base on Holy Rosary School?
Sure.
Big jump of topic, but
yeah, we can do that. School faces closure. Community residents are in favor of keeping the school. They think it should not be closed.
No school in the history of school closures has ever once had parents come out and say, "Oh yes, we think the school should be closed," and uproot our children and put them through the uncomfortable situation of having to change schools halfway through their academic career and have those schools split in half, and half of their friends go to a different school than the one they are going to. No parent has ever been in favor of that. So
it's a Catholic school, so it's not. I don't know. It's not one I particularly feel strongly about defending per se.
It looks like it's going to the two the schools. The population school would be, if it closes, because they haven't said for sure it's going to close. It is up for review, and it sounds like the decision is going to be made at the end of the month. They talk about when a school is reviewed. It's not with the review is not with an intent to close the school, but sometimes that's what sometimes is discovered. The attendance was down. There's only 96 students enrolled. So, but it looks like Deshay and Sacred Heart are the schools that it's going to be split between.
Right. Yeah.
Or did I get that right? I was going off memory on
I was just going to say that it says that the 96 students enrolled doesn't represent the entire learning student body of that school. There's 377 students online. So there's so it's, I mean,
so
that still might be small, but
a good portion of the student population stayed home and didn't actually physically go this year. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a high number. I don't think that's nearly 75% of the school population doing e-learning rather than going in person. That's very high compared to other schools.
I think that's really high.
This is a statement anytime someone says I shouldn't be making this statement, they should listen to their own advice. So I'm not going to say I shouldn't be making this statement, but I am saying this based on anecdotal information rather than raw, hard data I have looked into. Okay. Holy Rosary School is in a bubble of affluence surrounded by an area of economically a lower economically area. The socioeconomic conditions in the bubble around Holy Rosary have a lower median income than the area that is fed directly for Holy Rosary. So this is also a circumstance where you have, and not exclusively, but you will have a number of students who currently live in the cathedral area of the city who are coming from higher socioeconomic backgrounds who are currently going to Holy Rosary, with a fair number of other students coming from higher socioeconomic backgrounds who will now be going to two different schools that both have a larger portion of their population come from lower income families. Mm. So that may also play a role in some of the dynamics at play. I don't know if I said that carefully enough to get across my meaning, but essentially, I think you're going to have a situation where a number of rich kids who are going to school with rich kids are now going to have to start going to school with poor kids.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, might concern the parents, I guess, but isn't a problem to me.
No, and that's fair. My overall solution to this, and I think we agree on the overall solution to this, is we should unify school systems and have a single secular school system that is respectful of the religious beliefs of all students, and any school that gives preferential treatment to any one religion over any other religion should be 100% privately funded and not receive taxpayer dollars.
Yep.
If you want a private school that's publicly funded, no. If you want a private school, you should have a private school. And if you want a separate religious school, that should be a private school. Yeah. The government shouldn't be giving preferential treatment to a specific religion, and it would save money. And we know it would save grotesque amounts of money.
Yeah.
And it's not like it would be a cutting of costs in half, because obviously you still need a similar number of teachers and all that. But the studies that have gone into this, probably the most detailed study was one done in the province of Ontario that sort of went through the costs. But even if Ontario is approximately a population 10 times ours, or at least it did when the study was done. Mm-hmm. If we extrapolate the costs to that of Saskatchewan and say they're about 1/10, we are still dealing with a level of savings that is, ungodly levels of savings. So maybe we can put the link to that study up on the site as well. I'll see if I can get that to you.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't have it top of mind, so I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but we wouldn't have to be closing schools on people if, and people wouldn't have to bus nearly as far if we only had one system. And we have that within the city as well right now. And we see in the city there are schools literally next door to each other, where one school is over capacity and is bursting at the seams, or at least pre-COVID was bursting at the seams.
Right.
There's probably additional room now that a lot more people are doing e-learning, and then other schools that are more than half empty, and they're right beside each other. And that is silly. It is ridiculous. And it goes both directions. This isn't a one system is, going to benefit more than the other. We see that across both systems, where there's situations where in one area the Catholic school is bursting at the seams and the public school is half empty, and in other areas where it's the public school that's bursting at the seams and the Catholic school is half empty.
Right.
So it's I was not an easy solution, a simple solution. There's a simple
Right.
solution that is unfortunately not a politically easy solution.
Yeah. Well, we're at about an hour, so I wonder if we want to bang out just a couple of quick ones here.
Sure.
The situation in corrections with the protesting inmates.
Yeah.
Cory Cardinal, the person who kind of organized the protest, wrote an article for the CBC. I'll put the link in the show notes. I think it's worth a read.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much more to say than there was before. This is just a really detailed story of what it was like.
Really well lines it out, and I know I think you're right. We need to just talk about this relatively briefly because I know I have gone off on some fairly lengthy rants in previous episodes. So if people really want to hear my thoughts on it, they can go back and listen if they haven't heard the first time around. But
essentially, we believe that inmates are people.
Yeah. What a testament to Cory Cardinal, though, right? Like, this man is working in what are literally some of the worst conditions you can operate under, and is organizing people, is showing compassion for others, is really going out of his way to help other people. Obviously there's a certain degree of self-interest in improving his own situation as well. I don't know what he's in for. I don't know that full story. So I'm sure there are going to be some people who say, "Oh, how dare you say positive things about someone who did," and list off whatever, what crimes he was in there for.
Yeah.
But
sounds like he's a positive influence and force inside the prison right now.
And to speak to the fact, he's living in an overcrowded quarantine unit, and living in cruel and unusual circumstances. We are not supposed to, our moral framework should not be inflicting cruel and unusual punishments on anyone.
Yeah.
So
even if they broke the law or fit into what we believe as a criminal person. I'm not a fan of people labeling people as criminals. Even I don't even like that. So
So, and again, we know for certain most people in prison are in there for nonviolent offenses. That's there's raw data that proves that. That said, even those who are, a civilized society should not be inflicting cruel and unusual punishments on anyone, regardless of why some feel they need to be punished. So But that article is great. It's really thorough. It really speaks to the work he's done. So everyone should read it. Next story.
Next story from PA Now. SGI rebates. Possible NDP calls surplus suspicious. I don't know much about this, but it's interesting that the SGI has a rate stability reserve so that they don't have to raise rates. They take in, they've got this money banked, and now they're looking at giving out checks or rebates to people based on how big their surplus is getting. But this is not over. I don't know what exactly the NDP is calling suspicious about the surplus. Maybe they think that the rates should be lowered, but
the only thing I can really see is, how old is this article? Oh, it's February, because it's talking about how opposition NDP was calling for rebates before the fall provincial election. Okay, was calling for it before. Says checks need to be going out to a public that has been hurt financially. I think that there might be more to that story as we go. There's savings because of a reduction of claims, which there's less people on the road. I'm not surprised there is a reduction in claims. I don't necessarily have a problem with keeping it in as a surplus. The NDP calling for it to be paid out right before the election actually seems weird to me, because my suspicion on a large surplus would be the government continuing to build up a surplus in SGI's reserves, and then right before an election have this paid out to make people happy, right? Like that's the suspicious part. And so the NDP calling for it before the last election seems strange to me, but it might be one of those ones where as we look into it further, there more comes to light as that gets investigated further.
It doesn't seem suspicious to me at this point, but I'm not seeing everything they're seeing. So.
The other aspect is secretly using a crown for revenue generation. So having it build up a surplus, and then at some point the provincial government just go yoink and pull it out into general revenues rather than having it paid out to the people using it. But honestly, I'm not that fussed about that. My thoughts on crowns. They should either not be private or actually be run by the government. So if we feel that this should be a government utility, if insurance should be a government utility that we're offering, I don't mind let the user fees for using the utility go back to the government. So
no, that's right. I guess we can look at.
You know what? There is a legislated mandate that that SGI run the fund on a break-even basis. So I guess that's part of where the suspicion comes in. Okay. If you have a legislated mandate that something is required to be run on a break-even basis, it shouldn't be running at a profit.
Right.
So
that is why. Yeah.
Yep.
And just one more, I guess we're running late on time here. So, let's see. Share this screen again. A shocking number of suspected overdose deaths in January, average at more than one per day in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
36 suspected overdose deaths in the month of January. And this is, it's concerning. I think that we definitely need to figure out how to, deal with this. I know there's a safe injection site or safe drug use site in Saskatoon, but maybe we need more throughout the province that can help, help people so that they're not overdosing.
Yeah. It got brought up in the debates prior to the provincial election. Ryan Miley had that, to me, was one of the most powerful parts of the debate, was you can't help someone get off drugs if they're dead.
Yeah.
Regardless of anything else, finding ways of helping people live should be our first priority when dealing with any sort of drug issue. We need to treat drugs as a health issue, not a criminal issue.
Yes, exactly.
There are stories tied together, right? Like this is a health concern, not a criminal concern.
Yep.
Criminalizing it doesn't make it safer.
No. It just turns the people who do it into criminals.
Yeah. Arguments can be made around decriminalize versus legalize. Arguments can be made around taxation. We don't say, there's a risk of, there's a high risk of heart attacks in Canada, so we're going to put anyone in jail who eats a Big Mac.
Yeah.
And there's a direct cause and effect there. If someone is suffering from a medical issue, we need to be treating it. And I'm not surprised rates are going up. Since COVID, like everyone is struggling with mental health.
Yes.
And there's that meme that goes around. That's like, what's classy if you're rich? What's something that's classy if you're rich, but trashy if you're poor? How many upper middle class white folk have been sharing memes about all the wine they have been drinking this last year?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? You can't turn on social media without seeing someone who looks like me, someone who's like my age, my skin tone, or a differently gendered version of someone who looks like me, talking about all of the wine they're drinking or the scotch they're drinking, or, my experiment for COVID is determining which of these 37 different types of whiskey tastes the best. Like, all of these things are talked about. People are turning to, and
addiction is okay. For one group and not for other groups.
And I have tools at my disposal. Because of the privilege I have, if I'm drinking some, not going to specific, if I'm drinking or doing something recreationally, I have tools and supports in place that can help me get through that. If I all of a sudden started to feel like my drinking was getting out of hand, I see a therapist that's covered through my white collar health plan.
Right.
So I can reach out to that. And not everyone has that. So,
nope.
I think we need to be addressing that. And this is one of those things too that always gets under my skin when you hear the anti-maskers talking about, you can't let the disease be worse than the cure, and how mental health, this, that, and the other thing is more important. We should be just living our lives. Like, yes, we need to yes, we should do both. Like, yes, we should socially distance and wear masks. But if you're worried about mental health, then why don't you also support us in helping create mental health tools and supports for people who need it, so that you don't run into 36 people dying within a single month because of an overdose?
It strikes me as a little odd that the same people who will say that drugs should stay illegal and drug users should be thrown in jail because they're breaking the law will also be the same people who are currently worried about an overdose epidemic. They are actively acting against policies that would actually potentially reduce the number of overdoses. And I mean, you can talk to somebody and say, like, okay, but we know how society treats addicts. Yeah. So is it any surprise that we're experiencing more when these people that society discards are also, they're dealing with the same thing that we're all dealing with, but plus their addiction. So it's, I don't know. It's frustrating.
It is frustrating. So again, it speaks to the need for harm reduction as a short-term solution and better supports for people. And again, full circle at the beginning of the show, UBI, better social safety nets, like all of these things for the long-term solution.
Actual support for the citizens of your community.
It pays off in the end. And we know this. This is why I get so frustrated. Is we know this. We have data to back it up. This isn't some left-wing talking point stuff. No, there's hard and fast data that supports what we're talking about. Yeah. So, but anyways, that's a bit of a depressing note to end on. But I'm glad we got time to talk about that a little bit. And I
mean, there's actually a lot of stuff going on. And so we can only cover a certain amount. So I hope. Yeah,
it was a busy week. We often say it's a busy week. It seems like that's been our constant refrain. I think one of the things that comes about because of this is we get to be a bit more aware of how much is happening locally when you're paying attention to it, stuff that would normally get drowned out by the national, international. I know I'm a broken record saying that as well, but there's at least another half dozen stories that I could spend a half hour each talking about. So
we could do 2 shows a week with the amount of stuff that goes on.
Absolutely.
We don't have the time for that.
We don't have the time in our own lives. We need to somehow convince one of the talk radio stations to pay us to blather every morning about politics.
And something tells me that the same one that pays Gormley isn't going to pay us.
Probably isn't interested in us. No, really?
just an instinct, a gut feeling, I guess.
We could see if community radio will hire us for lollipops and wishes. But
yeah, that's right. No, I think you got to pay to be on community radio.
I think you're right, actually.
So that's not going to work.
Yeah. No. So.
All right.
We'll stick to our hour to an hour and a half per week, and talk, cover things as much as we can. Very much appreciate people tuning in and listening, being aware of what's going on within the province.
Yep, for sure.
I had someone from outside the country actually ask if I was on any podcast. I'm like, well, I do, but you're I'm going to be honest. You live in the U.S. You probably aren't going to be interested in the podcast I'm on. She's like, no, I want to listen. I'm like,
okay.
Right. So if you're listening, thank you. I appreciate it. Even if you're not in the province of Saskatchewan, get the insight into the Canadian prairie heartland, hinterland.
Whatever. Yeah. Is that what it's?
We're the hinterlands, not the
hinterlands. Okay. All right. You can find us at anchor.fm/FromManyPeoples. Our Twitter is at skpoliticspod. Our Facebook is facebook.com/FromManyPeoplesStrengthPod. And our email is FromManyPeoples@gmail.com.
Huzzah.
Hooray.
Well, thanks again for being such a gracious host and organizing and keeping our social media and all of that a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the right way.
Thank you nonetheless. More well-oiled than it would be if I was the one. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Have a great week.